After 15 years of mopping floors, she strode into the boardroom and dismissed the CEO. She was referred to as Ms. Denise. Certainly not Denise Jenkins. Definitely not Denise from accounting. Not Mrs. Jenkins, as she liked to be called. Only Ms. Denise, the custodian. Each morning at 5:45, well before the office lights flickered to life and the sales team began boasting about their latest victories, she was already present, maneuvering a squeaky cart past the frosted glass doors of Crestwell Holdings. Her grey uniform had lost its vibrancy over the years, and her sneakers had become worn down from countless walks along the length of that building. With a rag tucked neatly in her pocket, she wore a serene expression and moved with a steady rhythm, as if this was a routine she had mastered long ago. In a sense, she truly had. 15 years spent gathering crumpled napkins from conference rooms, retrieving gum wrappers from the break room floor, and erasing fingerprints from elevator buttons that always seemed to be neglected. To many of the people who worked there, she faded into the surroundings like a piece of wallpaper. When she was present, they conversed as if she were not there, speaking around her and through her, rendering her invisible. Aside from a handful of competent individuals, primarily interns or temporary staff who had yet to grasp that ignoring her was an unspoken rule of the workplace, yet Denise held no bitterness. Initially, that wasn't the case. She maintained a low profile, remained silent, and absorbed everything around her. Heard the joyful sounds emanating from the corner offices, heard the discussions that others deemed unworthy of hushed tones, the humor, the hubris, the deception. She absorbed all the knowledge she required simply through a mop and attentive listening. Once, a marketing representative placed a complete sandwich on the trash can rather than disposing of it properly inside. Denise grabbed it and flung it away in silence. He strolled past, offering no words of gratitude. I simply glanced at her and remarked, "Ensure the carpet is dry before the 3 o'clock meeting." She offered a gentle smile and a subtle nod. The following day, he accidentally spilled coffee on the very same carpet and pointed fingers at her for not having cleaned it thoroughly. She gave another nod. This was not the initial occurrence. This won't be the final one. On the 4th floor, Douglas Fairbanks, one of the senior VPs, was known for his loud demeanor and overpowering cologne. He once chuckled with his assistant, pondering the idea of spending a lifetime in this place without even having a desk. She listened to him. He was indifferent. He was unaware of her identity. Not a single one did. The building was teeming with individuals who believed their titles conferred worth, who thought that respect was something to be achieved through quarterly targets and punctuality at 10 a.m. gatherings that could have easily been messages. They were unaware that Denise didn't seek their approval, for Denise held a greater share of that company than anyone else in that building. Yet she kept it to herself. Not at this moment. As she maneuvered her cart past the executive offices that morning, she took a moment to clean a glass wall marred by fingerprints on the company logo when her phone vibrated softly in her pocket. A single message. Only one. "Sentence. We stand prepared for your cue." She slid the phone back into her pocket, her face a mask of inscrutability. She continued on her path, yet on this occasion she was doing more than merely scrubbing the floors. She moved forward, heading toward an unknown destination, and no one anticipated what was about to unfold. Prior to Denise ever wielding a mop, in that establishment, she found herself at a kitchen table in Columbus, Georgia, meticulously reviewing business plans alongside her husband, Roland Jenkins. That was a time before Crestwell Holdings had even come into existence. Merely a thought jotted down on the reverse side of a grocery receipt. Roland possessed an undeniable ambition. Such a fierce drive is something that can't be instilled. He had spent his formative years navigating the roads in his uncle's delivery, trucks charting courses through Alabama and South Carolina. He understood the intricacies of logistics thoroughly, long before the term supply chain ever came into play. Denise, in contrast, was the mastermind operating behind the curtain. She was not one for public chatter, yet her keen perspective on issues allowed her to dissect them with precision, effortlessly identifying the elements that were out of place. In 1998, Roland and his friend Curtis Banning pooled their resources to launch a freight brokerage. beginning with a single rented office, 2 flip phones, and a barely functional fax machine. Denise took the initiative to invest first. When her father passed away, he left her a modest inheritance, a life insurance payout that many would have typically used as a down payment on a home. However, Denise envisioned something entirely different. She instructed Roland one night, "Put it in your name. I'll remain in the shadows, it's best kept a secret." He gazed at her from across the table and asked, "Are you certain?" "I know what I'm doing," she asserted. "I have faith in you." In the following 6 years, the company experienced remarkable growth. Curtis managed the connections, Roland oversaw the operations, and Denise meticulously monitored every dollar. She managed the accounts, organized documents, and assisted in drafting agreements under a separate LLC she established as a precaution. She believed it was the only way to shield them both. However, Roland failed to safeguard himself. In 2004, a tragic accident on I-185 claimed him far too early. A late-night delivery, a weary driver, a flipped trailer, all lost in an instant. Curtis delivered a lackluster address at the funeral, focused solely on formalities, with hardly a mention of Denise. That marked the initial indication. A few weeks later, Curtis submitted documents to eliminate Roland's name and discreetly excluded Denise from all internal communications. He thought she would vanish. However, Denise possessed the evidence, official documents signed and dated from the outset, that granted her equal ownership of Roland's share. Moreover, she possessed an advantage. She had the option to take legal action, to stride into that office accompanied by attorneys and assert her authority in that moment. Yet, she chose to remain patient. Denise understood the nuances of influence and the art of seizing the moment. She remained silent, offering no press, no letters, just an absence of words. In 2007, a position became available on a community board in Macon for night janitorial, staff at Crestwell Logistics. She marked it with a circle. 2 days later, she entered with a fabricated resume, a borrowed address, and a new pair of work shoes. She landed the job immediately. Curtis failed to acknowledge her, not even a single time. By that point, he had already stepped away from running the place. A fresh name was circulating. Thomas Wexler, a young MBA from Florida State, was unfamiliar with the foundations of the company, but certainly knew how to present himself like a CEO. Denise maintained her focus, consistently putting in the effort. Night after night, floor by floor for 15 years. With each trash can she emptied and every bathroom she scrubbed, it transcended mere cleaning. It was an act of observation. She observed, noted, anticipated, and meticulously retained each and every receipt. However, in time, what you conceal will rise to the top. Denise was nearing the end of her digging. By the 10th year, Denise had become intimately familiar with every corner of Crestwell's headquarters in Birmingham, Alabama. She was aware of the hallway with the loose floorboard, the microwave that sparked when shut too forcefully, and the directors who habitually charged personal dinners to company cards. She no longer had to wonder. She was fully aware of the unfolding events. Crestwell transformed from a close community of logistics professionals into a sprawling, impersonal entity, where executives cloistered behind glass partitions tossed around buzzwords, while those on the front lines struggled to keep afloat. She observed the warehouse drivers arriving, their backs weary from the strain, clutching overtime slips that always seemed to go unapproved. She caught the HR ladies murmuring about skimping on health benefits. On several occasions, she witnessed mid-level managers being escorted out, dismissed without warning for breaching protocol. One individual, a man named Terence Doyle, erred by voicing his concerns regarding salary disparities during a staff meeting. He vanished in just a week. Denise seemed to fade into the background in those rooms. They spoke freely in her presence. Initially, she remained silent, absorbing every word. However, she began to put her thoughts onto paper. She stored a small black notebook in her locker, hidden behind a plastic bag filled with spare gloves. The document brimmed with names, dates, quotes, detailing who said what, when it was said, and who was present in the room. As you turn the pages, you'll come across notes such as Feb 14. We can reduce the bonus pool for junior employees. They will accept whatever we provide. Wexler is in room 508, CFO. June 3rd, neglect of warehouse safety violation. A man lost his footing. No documentation submitted. Brenda witnessed it. August 19th. I heard Wexler say, "Let the janitor take care of it. That's her job." I found myself positioned exactly in that spot. It wasn't resentment driving her, it was a moment of pure understanding. She observed a firm suffocating in its own hubris. One evening at approximately 11:45, Denise halted her cart in front of the executive suite on the 6th floor. The corridor lay shrouded in darkness, save for the glow emanating from the primary conference room. She caught the sound of laughter from within. Wexler's voice resonated. I mentioned to him that if he's unhappy with his pay, he has the option to clock out and explore opportunities with DoorDash. I have 20 additional resumes pending. Joyful sounds erupted. Then one of the VPs, Meredith Chandler, remarked that many of these individuals ought to appreciate the opportunity to even step foot in the building. They burst into laughter once more. Denise lingered in the shadows, unnoticed. After a brief pause, she turned and left, not in anger but with a sense of resolution. With each glimpse, her comprehension deepened. This place was beyond repair. It was terrible. They were not going to alter their course simply because a polite request was made. They required replacement. She began to strategize subtly, bit by bit. She convened with her attorney in a secluded corner of a diner along US Highway 280, a man named Elliot Miles, both unassuming and straightforward. She presented him with a flash drive. Within lay a treasure trove of years' worth of notes, photographs, recorded dialogues, every detail meticulously captured since the very beginning. Elliot remained silent for a considerable time after reflecting on it. He turned to her and remarked, "You realize that once you take this step, it will rattle the entire structure." Denise gave a slight nod. "It's already trembling." "They are yet to realize it." He grinned. "I will begin composing the necessary documents." The strategy was straightforward. Allow them to stride directly into their own snare. Let them continue to believe she was merely a cleaning lady. Allow them to misjudge her once again. She desired their assurance, their ease, for the descent always feels more severe when the edge was never anticipated. Yet, there are moments when even the most enduring flame requires merely a single spark. And that spark was poised to ignite on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. It all began with a simple paper plate. Denise had just completed her task in the third-floor break room, meticulously wiping down the counters, disposing of the trash, and replenishing the so-called premium powdered creamer. As she strolled down the lengthy corridor of the conference, her eyes caught sight of it. A partially consumed slice of birthday cake languishes in the middle of the hallway, a fork protruding from it, chocolate smudged across the carpet. It was carelessly abandoned, not even placed on a table, simply left to lie where it fell. She lowered herself gradually, not out of struggle, but because there was an intentionality to that plate, as if someone had placed it there to observe her reaction. As she lifted it, a voice echoed in her ears. "A spot has been overlooked." There he was, Wexler, positioned at the hallway's end, hands casually tucked into his pockets, a smirk playing on his lips, as if he had nothing to worry about. She tilted her head ever so slightly. "Beg your pardon?" He approached her with deliberate slowness. "Right there," he indicated, gesturing to the floor beside the spot she had just tidied up. "A client presentation is about to take place in this space. Could you take another look at the floor before they arrive?" Not a single mark was found, not even a trace of wear. Denise rose, balancing a cake plate in one hand while gripping a mop handle with the other. She remained silent. Wexler gazed at her, then let out a chuckle as if she were in on a secret joke. "I honestly believe that some of you just act like you're cleaning to stretch out your time here." Her gaze sharpened for a brief moment. "Which individuals are you referring to?" she inquired. He took a moment to stop. "Oh, please," he chuckled, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Try not to take things too personally. I'm merely suggesting that if I offered you a bit more, perhaps you'd notice the details before I do." She blinked once, her face a blank canvas. She gave a slight nod. "I'll ensure it's immaculate," she declared. Wexler brought his hands together, with a sharp clap. "That's the kind of response I appreciate." He strode away, a sense of pride swelling within him, convinced he had shown her her rightful position. He was completely unaware. That evening, Denise chose not to head directly home. She made her way to the Crestwell Records room, a space she could enter quietly after hours, thanks to a badge she had taken from a manager who had once forgotten it on a sink. She had held onto it for months just in case. She hurriedly gathered files, snapped photos, collected emails, reviewed budget reports, and, most crucially, printed a bonus report from that very quarter. It revealed that Wexler had awarded himself a $55,000 bonus for outstanding performance. In the meantime, he had slashed meal stipends for employees, lowered overtime rates for drivers, and put a halt to raises for custodial and warehouse personnel. The ultimate breaking point arrived. The following morning, Cynthia, one of the janitors, entered the locker room in tears. Her adolescent son had been involved in a car accident, and she had requested a day off to go to the hospital. Her appeal was rejected. Rejected. Insufficient coverage, they claimed. Denise remained seated, absorbed in the sounds around her. Cynthia struggled to complete a sentence, her words choked by tears. The executive office showed no interest whatsoever. She existed merely as a name on the schedule. Denise remained silent. She rose to her feet, retrieved her phone from her bag and made her way outside. She reached out to Elliot. "It is time," she declared. "Are you certain?" "I have no doubt." "Very well," he responded. "It's bound to get chaotic." Throughout her entire life, she remarked, she had been tidying up chaos. "Let us proceed." In the following 48 hours, Denise initiated the process. She provided her attorney with the last receipts, organized a private shareholder meeting, and set up an urgent review in accordance with her legal rights as the majority holder. The amusing part was that none of them realized, not even when she arrived the following day donning a fresh coat, a neatly pressed blouse and shoes that had clearly avoided any contact with a mop for quite some time. She strolled by the front desk, not even casting a look at her former cart. She ascended in the elevator to the 8th floor, heading directly to the boardroom. However, what she had to express would not only transform her existence, it would dismantle all their preconceived notions of authority. The boardroom at Crestwell Holdings featured 12 leather chairs, an extravagant chandelier, and a custom table worth $14,000 that was transported from Seattle. Wexler once boasted about it being genuine walnut, as if that held any significance for the janitors who scraped gum from beneath it. At 10 o'clock in the morning, with precision, the quarterly review commenced. Wexler stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, tie loosened, exuding an air of ownership over the very atmosphere surrounding him. To his left was Meredith Chandler, his trusted second-in-command. Beside her stood Curtis Banning, the sole individual present who ought to have anticipated what lay ahead, but he actually didn't. Denise entered 5 minutes later, quiet as a paused heartbeat. Without a mop or gloves, she stood there, clad in a navy blue blazer, a folder held firmly in her hand. Wexler scowled. "Apologies, but we are currently engaged in a meeting. Maintenance is expected to arrive after hours." She remained unblinking. "I'm not here for upkeep." The atmosphere in the room transformed. Meredith narrowed her eyes at her. "Excuse me, may I ask if you have a scheduled appointment?" "I do," Denise said, her footsteps measured as she made her way to the far end of the table. "I am confident that the shareholders received the appropriate notifications." At that moment, Elliot entered behind her, briefcase in hand, exuding an air of calmness. "Good morning," he remarked. "I am Elliot Miles, serving as legal counsel for Mrs. Denise Jenkins, the majority shareholder of Crestwell Holdings." Quietude. Wexler's lips parted, yet silence enveloped him. Denise placed the folder on the table, revealing signed partnership, agreements from 1998, updated ownership documents, and a notarized letter that granted her full voting rights following Roland Jenkins's death. Curtis squirmed in his seat as if the ground beneath him had suddenly vanished. "No," he murmured, "that doesn't seem accurate." Denise glanced in his direction. "Don't forget the agreements, Curtis. You contributed to their creation." He remained silent. She advanced, her voice steady and soft. "For 15 years I observed this place transform into something entirely different. I observed you inflate your bonuses, overlook safety violations, and penalize employees for simply requesting basic respect." Her gaze locked onto Wexler. "I observed as you transformed my husband's company into a stage for your self-importance." Wexler attempted to brush it aside with a chuckle. This is a miscommunication. This situation feels quite dubious to me. It's not a fraud." Elliot interjected. "Every document has undergone verification. At this time, Mrs. Jenkins has initiated a vote of no confidence regarding the current CEO. She possesses the power to act in accordance with the original shareholder agreement." Wexler rose, placing both hands firmly on the table. "Your actions seem misguided." Denise circled the table deliberately, meeting the gaze of each individual. 15 years, she remarked. "You all gazed right through me as if I didn't exist at all. You allow others to endure pain. This company has been allowed to decay. I offered you countless opportunities to demonstrate a sense of compassion." She halted at Wexler's chair. "You did not succeed." His face flushed with color. "Do you really believe you can just stroll in and assume control?" She leaned closer. "I embody the essence of the company." Elliot arranged a neat little pile of letters before each member of the board. "Effective immediately, the contract of Mr. Thomas Wexler is hereby terminated. Security has been alerted." Wexler's voice trembled. "This isn't possible," Curtis whispered softly to himself. "She has already done it." Moments later, security arrived. Silence enveloped them as they stood, anticipation hanging in the air. Wexler scanned the room for support, but there was none to be found. He snatched his phone, his pride, and marched out, with Meredith trailing behind, suddenly recalling her next meeting. After the room emptied, Denise faced the board once more. "I'm not here to take charge," she said. "I aim to restore the essence of what this place once represented." A young board member, Jonas Evers, who is just shy of 30, lifted his hand. "What would you like to tackle first?" Denise beamed with joy. "Begin by paying attention to those whose voices have been overlooked for the longest time." She shut the folder with a decisive motion. "Transformation begins now. Removing the trash doesn't necessarily equate to a tidy home." Denise understood that the true journey was just starting. On the upcoming Monday morning, Denise found herself parking in the executive lot for the very first time. Her dislike wasn't due to the space, it loomed. Larger, approached nearer, shielded from the downpour. Yet there was an air of detachment about that lot, as if it had been set aside for those unfamiliar with the essence of hard work. Nevertheless, she parked, strode in, chin up. She acknowledged the front desk receptionist with a warm greeting, using their name. "Greetings, Tasha." The young woman fluttered her eyelids. "Excuse me, Miss Denise, it's simply Denise now." She entered the elevator. Without a mop or cleaning cart in sight, only a notepad and a packed calendar remain. By 9:30 a.m., she found herself in her office, the walls freshly painted, yet the same window view that Wexler used to boast about remained unchanged. However, she hardly devoted any time to gazing outside. There's an overwhelming amount to tackle indoors. What was the first thing she did? Scheduled a staff meeting. This is not intended for the board, not intended for the higher-ups, for the team members. All drivers, administrative personnel, custodial staff, and customer service representatives are welcome. The room filled up rapidly. Expressions of confusion crossed faces, while a hint of suspicion lingered in the air. Anticipation hung in the air, shrouded in uncertainty. Denise entered the room and positioned herself at the forefront. There is no microphone available, only her voice. She started with a note of gratitude, saying thank you. Many of you were unaware of my identity. You really didn't have to. Your efforts resonated more profoundly than any designation in this establishment. She hesitated. I aim to make a difference, but I can't do it alone. For years I've absorbed your frustrations, your fears, and your ideas. Silently. Now, I want to listen to them spoken aloud. Individuals began to adjust in their seats. It fell, short of their expectations. A driver by the name of Alonso lifted his hand. Are we going to receive our overtime compensation again? Indeed, Denise replied. Additionally, the retroactive payment for the previous 2 quarters. It will be reflected in Friday's check. Deborah, a representative from HR, rose to her feet. What about the health coverage? Each year it seems to deteriorate further. Denise mentioned that we are currently assessing new providers. Each employee will receive a survey to share their thoughts. Say goodbye to hidden choices regarding your health and happiness. No applause breaks were present, no exaggerated responses, only quietude. And then whispers. Individuals glanced at one another, gradually coming to the understanding that she was indeed serious. Someone inquired about the individuals Wexler dismissed without justification. We are currently examining those terminations, she replied. If you have been unjustly let go, you will receive a notification. While there's no promise, you can at least expect to have your name cleared. A different tone emerged from the rear. Are you truly the owner? Denise beamed. I have always been. She concluded the meeting with a solitary vow. When you share your thoughts, I am here to hear them. Put in the effort and you'll earn the respect you deserve. Following that, the challenges only intensified. They became more challenging. The other executives were not particularly eager to embrace her presence. Some attempted to obstruct her choices, contending that she lacked the necessary business experience. One even wondered if she understood how to achieve growth at scale. Denise gazed at him and remarked, I have contained my sorrow in silence for 15 years. I believe I can handle your spreadsheets effectively. That silenced him. She introduced fresh leadership by promoting from within the ranks individuals who had long been disregarded. She revised vendor agreements, restructured warehouse leases, and reinstated the annual Employee Appreciation Day that had inexplicably vanished from the budget in previous years. She explored each department, engaged with the teams, shared meals in the break room, and absorbed their stories. Gradually, the atmosphere of the building started to shift. Not gentler, just more authentic. One evening, Cynthia, the janitor who had wept for her son's tragic accident, slipped a note into Denise's office. It expressed disbelief that anyone like us could ever reach a place like that. You demonstrated that I was mistaken. Denise tucked that note away in her top drawer. Yet despite all the transformations, a single question lingered in hushed tones. Denise understood that she would need to respond to it. What caused her to delay for such an extended period? It was a question that echoed in her mind repeatedly. What made you hold off, Denise? Some inquired with a sense of wonder, while others approached with skepticism, a handful harboring a subtle bitterness, as if perhaps she had allowed it to linger for too long. However, Denise remained calm and composed. She would simply recline in her chair, interlace her fingers, and repeat the same phrase each time. Power holds significance only when one understands its application. Denise chose not to wait, driven by something deeper than fear. She held back, allowing the company to reveal its true essence, free from her impact. She had to witness it firsthand, required the decay to emerge and reveal itself. Had she intervened too soon, they would have accused her of overreacting. They would have manipulated her, twisting the narrative to suggest she was complaining about trivial matters. 15 years of silence, truly? That rendered her irrefutable. She perceived it all, she allowed it to unfold. When the moment arrived, she chose not to dispute. She simply revealed the reality to them, and they crumbled beneath the burden of their own choices. The custodian had transformed into the observer, and ultimately the judge. One afternoon, she strolled back into the familiar hallway where Wexler had once indicated the spot she had overlooked. Identical carpet, identical light. Now, however, it was immaculate, and no one had the audacity to belittle her. An intern walked by her in the hallway, hesitated for a moment, and said with a hint of nervousness, "Hi, Mrs. Jenkins." Her lips curled into a smile. "Only Denise." That afternoon, she organized an intimate gathering for the team in the company courtyard. Without grand speeches or flashy banners, the scene is simple. Food trucks, folding chairs, and the sound of laughter filling the air once more. Alonzo, the driver, tapped his soda can against hers with a cheerful clink. "To those who prefer silence," he remarked. Denise lifted her can. To those who took everyone by surprise, the takeaway. It transcended mere possession. It explored the simplicity with which we assess individuals based on their attire. How swiftly we tend to speak over someone wielding a mop. How quickly we jump to the conclusion that worth is linked to job titles and corner offices. Denise was not an exception. She served as the constant reminder. Individuals do not cease to exist simply because you choose to look away. At times, the individual tidying up the space is the very one who crafted the structure. If you find yourself collaborating with someone you've yet to engage in conversation with, consider taking a moment to introduce yourself. One can never truly ascertain who possesses the keys to the entire structure. If this tale caused you to stop and reflect even momentarily, pass it along. Because at this very moment, another Miss Denise is being overlooked, spoken down to, and erased. Perhaps, just perhaps, she is observing. Inform her that we acknowledge her presence at this moment.